Good evening, Wealth Our Way Nation. What is going on? It is your main man, Charles Tank Harris, the founder and chief visionary officer of the financial literacy platform Wealth Our Way, where our motto is wealth is not only for the wealthy. I want to welcome each and every one of you to episode 3 of Wealth Our Way presents the Financial Power Hour. And before I get into who my wise and illustrious guest is, I want to do what I do every time I'm blessed to be on the airways, which is practice the attitude of gratitude and say thank you to each and every one of you who are here with us tonight as we stream across the Wealth Our Way Facebook and YouTube platforms. I want to give that special Wild Nation salute to all the members of Wealth Our Way Nation who watch our recordings whenever they can squeeze time in. And in this case, it's not 15 minutes of financial literacy, it's a whole power hour. So whenever you squeeze this in, whether it's tonight, over the weekend, during your lunch break, by all means, I thank you for taking the time out to tune in and learn and to contribute. And then, of course, a special heartfelt how are you and thank you to the good people of the Life 101 platform who listen to the audio of this very here program. So since we've changed the format and started the Power Hour on normally Wednesday evenings, but today is a special one-off Tuesday evening edition, and I'll get into why that is, we've been blessed to have just packed programs of people coming on and giving us information that exceeds my scope of expertise and knowledge. And I humbly submit to you guys day in and day out that although I know a lot about the financial landscape, there are high-level areas that I cannot speak intelligently to due to lack of exposure and experience. And tonight's guest, speaking on tonight's topic, is one I am not blessed to be able to speak at a high level to, because it is helping women, helping our sisters secure their financial futures. And I'm a firm believer. I know we're in an era of equality and we're trying to shatter gender roles and gender duties and things of that nature. But I still believe there are things that only women can teach women and only men can teach men to a high level. So when I want to empower my sisters across the country in their financial endeavors, I go get an expert. And I am blessed tonight to have Pastor and Dr. Sabrina Ellis with us. Dr. Ellis, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited and I appreciate the opportunity to participate with you tonight and be a part of the Wealth Our Way Nation.
I love it. I love it. You come highly recommended. Before I even got a chance to read your bio, see your gorgeous website and all of the things that you're doing, which we will get into throughout the hour, the person who referred you to the program is a person that I've known for now it's been about 30 years, Tamiko Richardson, who went to Temple University with me, who has taken me to her church in New York. And Tamiko is probably one of the few people who, as soon as my 15 minutes of finance program is over, who calls me immediately when it's over to tell me, hey, here's what you could do next time, or this was great. And I always love her feedback. And she said, you have got to have Dr. Ellis on. She's doing big things. And I'm just glad that you could fit me into your schedule. And I told everybody, I said, normally we do Wednesdays, but when you have someone on who is in Bible study on Wednesday nights, you got to make some moves and get them on the night that they can come on.
Right.
So I thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it. I love Tamika, and she provides that same encouragement and, support for me. And she made it happen. She got us together.
I definitely love that. So normally, I tell my audience this. My audience has a love relationship with me where they know I'm one of the wildest guys out. Now, don't be flustered. I've already been reprimanded, but pre-recording that Dr. Ellis is not going to stand for my wildness. So I'm going to keep it curtailed.
Do you?
I'm going to keep it curtailed. But I tell people all the time, I'm not a scripted guy. You sent over your bio. Your bio is immaculate and just filled with great endeavors and accomplishments. But I have a firm belief as a 24-year financial professional, but also as a 24-year salesman, nobody can tell my story better than I can tell my story. So I'm going to let you tell the audience about who you are, what you've done, and then we'll get into why we're here tonight.
Sure. Well, let me begin by saying what I am not. I am not that financial person as it relates to profession and spending time in sales and whatnot. But I am that professional woman. I've not been anything but that. So my purpose is actually to speak to women and in that area, but more or less to prick your conscience and to point you in the direction to ensure that your future is secured. Um, and I've enjoyed that process since it has become, I'll say a burden because maybe a passion is a better word. To make women really think about their futures. In the early stages of a relationship as opposed to uh, too late. And so that is my purpose. And I know we're going to talk more about how I came to this, but a lot of it has to do with some experiences and things that I've witnessed and been a part of, and how I've watched, very honestly, friends and associates who have become widows and their lifestyle changes drastically. And
It's
so,
interesting that you bring that up to that point. I think that wants to take me into my first path that we'll go down, because when I was advertising for the program, I invited, of course, I invited women because we're talking about women securing their financial future. But I also reached out to the brothers and I said, listen, if you have a woman that you love, if it's your wife, if it's your daughter, if it's your sister, if it's your friend, and you know that they could be in a situation where they're not prepared, this is a program that they need to listen to, and more importantly, that you need to listen to. I remember, and I go off topic a lot, but I always bring it back. So bear with me slightly. I was looking at, I have 5 daughters. So let's start there. 5 daughters. And there's a lot. I was raised by my mom and my grandmom. So it is very important to me that women in general, but in particular, the women in my life, are protected, provided for, and empowered. With that being said, I look into a lot of women's issues because as a man, I want to see where I can help. And as you'll see the chronological order of our programming this year, I'm going to do a program for the fellas, but I put the women first because, first of all, in our community, the women lead us. And I'm fine with that. And I know my audience is fine with that because we all, even if we had our father's presence in our home, we know that moms holds the home together, So I'm listening to Will Smith's audiobook, and he talked about his older sister's leadership in his life. Just the way in our community, whether it's in the church, whether it's in the home, whether it's in the neighborhood, women play a large role in shaping in our communities. With that being said, I was looking into, there was a big crisis in the UK, in England, for violence against women. And it really, my 21-year-old daughter and I were having deep conversations about this. And I just was perplexed. And I saw a movement that was starting amongst the men, where the men were being offended. Men who do not perpetuate violence were being offended that they were being lumped in with men who do perpetuate violence. And I saw a piece by a woman in England that spoke to my soul. She said, hey, look, I can understand how a group of men who do nothing but uplift and support women could feel minimized because of the direction of the conversation coming out of our groups. But instead of being offended, can you find new ways to help minimize the problem? There are certain things that men can do. If you're in a bar and you see a woman showing signs of disinterest in a conversation she's having, you as a man can walk over and interfere with the other man's aggression. So I think of that in our program financially. What can I do to help a area that I may not have an understanding in? I don't know what it's like to be a widow. I don't know what it's like to be a divorced wife, mother of 4. So when Tamiko and I spoke about it, she glowed with the recommendation of you. But more importantly, I wanted to start researching it on my own and see what problems face our community that need help. And when I think of just the title of your book, Wife Life, so I want to ask you, what was the motivation for creating Wife Life?
Well, I have to say it starts as far back as my teenage years when my parents divorced. So this is not just about a death, it's but a separation which can leave you feeling like a death has taken place. And so as a teenager, my parents separated and divorced ultimately. And my dad was a pastor, so I'm a PK. And when he decided to um, well, first he decided to leave the church, and then he decided to leave his family, and then because the church used our home, our house, as collateral to build another building. Of course, when he left, they wanted their house.
Wow.
And my mom had three children, three teenagers, um, two teenagers and one just a preteen. And she had to find a place for us to live in a matter of like 30 days.
Mm.
We had always lived in a house. And so we went to apartment living, and it's not to say that that's a bad thing. You know, it's just a change in lifestyle. But we went from living in a house to an apartment, ended up on food stamps, everything that looks like whatever looks like backing up as opposed to moving forward. So that was my first, and even as a teenager, not really understanding and comprehending everything, but it really impacted me. And so as time went on, years later and getting older, all in between there were either my mom's friends divorcing or people we knew in our context, but the women always seemed to have ended up in a lesser situation. And it's really, I guess I didn't realize how much it impacted me until there was a really big situation that took place again with another prominent pastor and his wife, and she became displaced and literally put out of her home, no income, living with a friend, sleeping on a sofa. And I was like, okay, how long are we going to blame the men, ladies? How long are we going to do that? And so it became an issue for me. I even wrote a blog about like, get your stuff together, you know? And so I started looking at doing the research about widows. And first of all, you know, when you look at the percentages, it's about, you know, the men die sooner than women.
Right.
You have
Right.
a lot of widows, but whatever the percentage of widows are, and I don't recall that right now, about 70% of that percentage end up living in poverty.
Mm. Mm. That.
So, you
Mm.
know, at a point I was like, okay, so I don't want to be a part of blaming the men, whatever their role may be in that, that's what it is. But I started thinking, well, at what point will the wife say, I got to make sure I'm going to be okay? Because if the statistics are telling you that your husband is likely to pass before you do, then I would think you would want to be interested in knowing, is there an insurance policy? Who's the beneficiary? Are there
Right.
any investments? Is the house in my name? You know, all of those things that we usually don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about.
Dr. Ellis, you touched on so much there, and I'm gonna interject, because the great thing about our conversation tonight is we're going to have different lenses on the same, I don't want to use the word problem, on the same challenge. And I speak to men. There are men in this group. There are men on the call right now listening who I've had conversations with on the other side of that, of what we lose when we get divorced. We try to be men, we try to provide, but we lose a lot. We lose waking up to our kids in the home. We lose the woman that we loved at one point. We lose a lot. It is very difficult, especially when you're going through that emotional turmoil at that moment. It's very difficult to stand in your manness and realize the other side of this equation. You just said something that spoke to my heart, where you say that there are women who end up with less. When you hear so much from a man's standpoint of what checks we're writing and what we're doing, and there's something, and my audience already knows this. I'm currently separated, so I'm going through this situation with my spouse currently, and we are looking to build a friendship. I immediately was like, we'll get divorced. I've been divorced once. I find that anything is easier to do the second when you already have experience with it. So no patience with trying to make this work. We'll just get divorced. And we both kind of paused and said, let's work on maybe seeing if we can be friends and see what can happen. What's the rush to getting divorced was our mindset. With that being said, I realized what you're saying now, both from a financial and a male presence standpoint, there's so much loss, not just on the man's side or the woman's side, but the union's side. Like, there are people who you've built this relationship up with and you go out into the community for, and now that relationship doesn't exist. And you have not just financial damage, but you have emotional damage.
Absolutely.
And both the man and the woman feel that, but you get so locked into what happened to you that you can't think about the other side. And hearing you say that, I've never thought about the fact that, I think I'm still here. So if my ex-wife needs something for our children, she can call me. But what does that feel like for her to have to call me? Why can't she just be independent enough to do it? Why didn't I leave her in a state that she was independent enough? So I hear what you're saying. I want you to keep on just speaking this good word.
Yeah, well, all of that is very true. And I don't want to stay with that whole divorce situation, but a lot of times, in addition to realizing at the point of the separation how many people were a part of your life and your lifestyle, the other thing that I feel that many couples, I won't say most, and I know it's not everybody, but you forget about the children.
Yes.
You forget what they must be feeling. You forget how it impacts the rest of their lives. You forget that there's the slightest possibility that they may think they had something to do with it, even if it sounds outrageous to the parents, but it's what happens. It's the reality. And so they lose friendships and relationships as well, because now daddy's friends are no longer mommy's friends. And so now we can't be with their friends and their kids. And it's so much involved.
And you know how we do in our community, we call everybody uncle this and aunt that. And now you done lost uncle. I was at a basketball tournament over the weekend with a really good friend of mine from my alma mater, Rick Brunson, coach at Camden High. And I was at his game and I sent a picture to my son and I said, look, Uncle Rick is coaching. And he said, I haven't seen Uncle Rick in years. And it hurt my heart. Like Uncle Rick was always around. Aunt Sandra was always around. But when you divorce, you lose friends and everybody picks a side.
Absolutely. Now that's a whole nother session.
Yeah, let's keep it financial. One of the things
it has an impact. It does have an impact. And so what my whole purpose is really, we deal with the divorce piece, but also the whole part about death, and the fact that we know you don't want to really have these conversations on the wedding day, but it's sort of like when you come home from the honeymoon, you really need to settle all of this, and then you can put it away and not worry about it.
Right.
But what ultimately happens is, we've gotten so caught up with the wedding day and the I do's and all of that, and we don't sit down and think about we don't think about the finances in our life that we're going to live out. We just start spending money, and we certainly don't think about what happens if one of us should die.
Right.
I mean, sometimes the women do die first. And the responsibility should be the same going both ways. The husband should not be left in poverty because the wife died.
Right.
But as the financial expert, that it all requires planning.
Planning and communication.
And so along this process, well, let me back up. I told you how I started, but what's interesting in so many ways is this book, and it's a small book. It's not a hard read at all. Um, it was released at the top of 2020, and then the pandemic came, so I couldn't really push it or anything. But my husband passed at the end of 2020. So I'm living this. I had no idea this, no clue. I was like, really? I just said to my daughter earlier today, I said, I wonder sometimes if I jinx myself. I don't know, but
You know that's how we think in our community. Not to cut you off, and I want to get right into the story of how your husband's passing not only has shaped your work, but just emotionally and personally, if to the extent that you wish to talk about it with your life. But I experienced that when I used to sell life insurance. A lot of the pushback on purchasing life insurance was that very thought: I'm gonna hex myself. If I buy the insurance policy, I'll die as soon as the ink is dry. It's crazy how people think that way, but it's a real thing.
Yeah, it is a real thing. The book talks about insurance, and it's not that. Well, let me put it this way: I did learn that a lot of people are misinformed as it relates to insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, it's intended to be replacement income, so it's not just a lot of money to just go splurge after the loss of your. I mean, if your husband made $100,000 a year and he left you an insurance policy, and he's no longer here, that means you don't have that $100,000 a year anymore. Why would you splurge with the insurance money?
Yeah.
It's to be the income that you're going to need that's missing because of his absence. You got kids to take care of, all of that. So you get smart. You talk to a financial person who can help you invest part of it, do whatever you have to do. But that's what I'm saying. I'm not that expert, but I do understand that you have to consider that somebody is going to die.
Right. The thing you say when you say you're not the expert, let me help that statement for a moment. I literally just had this conversation earlier today. There's a saying in sales, but in life in general, that people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah.
And your book is about caring. Your book is not about selling financial services or products or plans. Right. So you are the expert, because at the end of the day, I talk about financial planning every day. And I have a faithful audience that comes for knowledge. But at the end of the day, people come to listen to me talk because they know I care about how they end up. Right. And one of the reasons that I wanted you on our program so badly is that your motivation for your book isn't about even championing financial services. It's about how you as an individual get through this trying time. Yes. And it's about what my grandmother always said: an ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure. Yes. So you're going to lay groundwork. And that's what I want to kind of pivot to in the book. Some of the examples and topics you talk about insurance now, but just those conversations that a new couple needs to have. Right. When they say, here's what will happen if the plan that we have, the dream we have, doesn't reach fruition. How do we move on from there?
Right. And you're right. I'm glad you corrected me, because I'm not selling anything. Even in the book, I talk about the different types of insurance, but that's left up to you to decide, as long as you are securing your future.
Right.
I talk about all of the things that you need to deal with, and that you find that person that you trust that's going to walk you through the different ways to begin saving. And the other part of that is it's never too late. I cannot say that I always knew about this information. I can't. I learned it later in life. Some would say much later, but I had enough people saying to me, it's never too late.
Right.
Never too late. I wish I had come out of high school going right into finances and all of that, but I didn't. But it's okay, because it was not too late when I did. And so you are absolutely right. I care. I'm tired of seeing women suffer. And when I first started the book, I thought I would have somebody like walk alongside with me, aside me, as a like a ghostwriter, but it didn't work out because she didn't feel what I was
What you
feeling.
felt, right?
So, but she did share a story with me, and I mean, we talked and we shared information, and I tried it, and I thought this is not going to work. I can write it. I can write the book because I was rewriting everything she was writing. So, because I was doing the research.
Yes.
But what she did share with me is that her mother-in-law was living in the basement of her house
Wow.
for the very reason that
That
I
you were
was
talking about.
stating, that why I was writing the book,
That's
because
unbelievable.
her father-in-law did not leave her in a position to be able to continue to live her life.
That is one of the biggest concerns. As a financial planner, I speak to several groups besides for my audience every day. I speak to a group of about 30 women from the Midwest and West Coast, powerful women. Average, the median salary of the group is somewhere close to 300,000.
Okay.
And when I tell you their number one concern, they're roughly my age, 50, 51. They're what's considered the sandwich generation. They have to take care of themselves. They have to take care of kids that aren't quite out the nest yet or just recently launched from the nest. And they have to take care of their parents. And caring for the aging parent becomes the number one concern because it's not just a financial concern, it's a quality of life concern.
Mm-hmm.
It can take over your life, as you just pointed out about having your mother-in-law living in your basement. That can cramp your lifestyle. I used to do a drill, an exercise when I went into people's homes to sell life insurance. I loved having a husband and wife together, and I used to insist that they both be together. Now, most salespeople are insisting that both attend the presentation as a sales tactic. They know that one of the number one excuses they're going to get after they've presented and said, "Hey, are you ready to move forward?" is the person's going to say, "I got to talk to my spouse,"
Right.
and their spouse. And so they're asking for both people to be there to help close sales. I was asking for both people to be there because I wanted to illuminate to the people I was talking to how far apart or not even in the same realm they were on financial matters. So I used to do this drill saying, and it's kind of morbid, but it's relative. I was like, okay, husband and wife, he just passed away. What do you do? And the husband always wanted to answer, and I would always remind, hey, you're dead. You can't talk. So they really got a chance to see that they weren't prepared. That was the first thing they noticed. And I've said this to my audience before. One of the major trends, the major consistency that I learned from this exercise is that women are very risk averse. So when the money was left, there's a $5 million insurance policy. The women would invariably say almost 85, 90% of the time, they want to pay off every big ticket item that is there. Pay off the house, pay off the kids' college, pay off cars. And the husbands are turning colors if they're fair skinned. They're biting their lips if they're dark skinned. They're like, no, that's dumb. We got a 3% mortgage. Invest the money at 10% and live off of it. And we're like, nope, I want it out the way. And you saw the differences in planning. And these are conversations that never get had unless I'm in your living room talking to you about insurance.
Right. Well, and you're absolutely right, because for the most part, men are involved in those kinds of things. Women just want security.
Yes.
Well, I won't say just, a nice pair of shoes in a bag now and then. But we need security. We need to know that the house is going to be there. We need to know that we're going to have transportation. So I understand the different thought patterns, but what women have got to do is wake up and realize you don't want to have to grieve twice. Because, after my husband's passing, I had a probate attorney. I didn't have to go to probate court, thank God, because we did everything right as it related to our property. My name was on every.
Great.
There was not one thing. Every bank account, even though it was like we had the house account and then his and mine, but each of our names were on everything that we had. So when it came to the houses and everything, the attorney She said, I'm looking for one word, and your name has to come after this word. And she talked about survivorship.
Yeah. Yep.
She said, because if that's right, you don't even have to read a will. A will is going to probate court.
Right.
If everything is left to you and it's written that way, it's done.
Yes.
Everything is yours. And she shared with me that she had a client that it was so sad because this woman, she was living well, and she thought that her husband left everything to her. And I don't know where it all went, but she didn't get it. So she had to leave the house. She had to give up everything. That's the grieving twice. You grieving the loss of the person you were married to, and now you're grieving the fact that he never left you in a position for you to be able to live on, to keep moving forward.
And we're not talking, and I don't know that particular situation, but in normal circumstances, we're not talking duplicity here. We're not talking he had a second family he was trying to take care of. We're just talking he didn't do the simple things that he in his mind meant to do, just never did it. And now wifey has to hop through all these hoops and is displaced. Kids got to transfer schools, and he just didn't dot the I's and cross the T's. This was not intentional. This was accidental omission.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the readers and supporters of the book that I wrote talked about the fact that he thought when I wrote it that it was just going to talk about how to make his wife a better wife. And we laughed about it. But then when he read it, and he said, it helped me because I'm one of those that just told my wife, well, if something happens to me, just call so-and-so. Just call so-and-so. And not to reveal too much about the book, but there is a story in the book where there was a spouse that did the same thing, but he and his contacts went down in a plane crash altogether.
Wow.
So that story right there, when we talk about this is for men as well, it gave him a wake-up call. She does need to know where everything is. Why would I subject her to having to call around and ask people, where is the policy? Is there a policy? What did he do with this? And what? No. Have a conversation.
And that goes right to what I want to pivot to. First, I'm going to take a couple of questions. Tamiko has two in the chat. One of them is, what's the best advice for 20-year-old women? So for younger women, women who haven't even maybe built their family yet, because I would imagine, I know in my planning practice, there's different strokes for different folks. You know, we hit different stages of lives and different things are important. So solely from your expertise in dealing with these issues that personally have affected you, that have affected the people who you counsel, what do you find for younger women would be the best bit of advice you would offer?
I think, well, we've already established, well, we did this prior to the show, that many of our kids in our culture are not taught about money. They don't know how to handle money. That's not something that we grew up with as a people generally. And so nowadays, what I'm hearing, and I don't even think, is 20 in the millennial group? I don't think
20 is past millennials. I want to say it's like Gen Zs or even after Gen Z.
I get confused with that.
Yeah, me too.
I do know, and I've actually talked to a few millennials because their attitude is they want to live in the moment.
Right.
They can't think that far ahead or whatever. I very honestly think that we have to be intentional about bringing that group of people together. So we're having this conversation today. I think that we have to have some of the younger adults, some people that look like them that are doing this financial piece, and then some of us who have had these experiences. But I think we literally need to be intentional about calling that age group out and saying to them, first of all, start building your life without a spouse,
right?
A single person. You can have this, that, and the other, on your own. And that's what you kind of bring to the relationship. And then the conversation is, Okay, is this mine and that's yours? How are we going to do this? But the key is communication, because you can't go into a relationship assuming that you're going to just be able to keep all your stuff separate from all of his.
Right.
Now, if that's the way you all work it out, I mean, I don't know how that works, but as it relates to talking to that 20-year-old, that truthfully is the group I really I wish I could get to, because you head off a whole lot of stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
You're preemptive. You get in front of it.
Right. And that is the group of young people. And I know they don't want to think about dying. You know, I'm too young. I'm not, but everybody is dying.
Right. That's
And
one thing we're all guaranteed to do.
right. And it's really teaching them certain responsibilities. It's the responsibility that every person needs to have or be aware of. But in our culture, again, it's normally it's not a priority, or it has not been historically. And so it's just, we have to be responsible in our culture to save our kids.
I think that when I created Wealth Our Way as a financial advisor who had been selling product, selling insurance policies, selling investments, I wanted to create something that wasn't sales driven. I wanted to create something that was information driven. I wanted it to increase financial literacy. I always liken it to a voter registration drive. You go on a campus to get people to vote. You're not there without the fact that you have a candidate that you rock with, but you're not going on there to talk about that candidate. You just want more people to vote. You believe in your candidate so strongly that your mindset is, if more people vote, they'll find my candidate and my candidate will win. But I'm here to make more people vote. That is how I feel about financial literacy. I don't care. I have family and friends in our audience that are religious. I should use religious, that are steady, devout, Wealth Our Way family members that don't call me to implement their financial needs. And I do that for a living. They know I don't care. I just want them doing it. And the passion that I see from you when you talk about that Gen Z millennial group is we just want to get them thinking in a way that's financially literate. Because once these concerns come to your mind, I told a story a month or so ago. I was in a store late night. I needed something for my teeth. I had to brush my teeth, didn't have my toothpaste. And I ran into a store and it was almost midnight. And I'm looking for the aisle with the toothpaste. And I see a woman who had to be in her 80s stocking shelves. And all I can say is this is a woman who did not plan to be here. No one is sitting there with their life plan and saying, I think at 80, I'll be bored and I want to go work in a store. Like, if that was her choice, God bless her, but I don't think it was. When I ride past toll booths and I see 90-year-olds and 70, 80-year-olds, I know that a level of planning that could have been done wasn't done. And I think we avoid the planning because we think the outcome of the planning is worse than it's going to be. We think it's going to be so hard if we address how much money we need. We think it's going to be so hard if we address how much insurance is going to cost. But the disservice is when you pass, and even when you don't pass, because this is something I have to have people really relate to. I did an exercise several years back, and I've encouraged everyone I've ever talked to. I'll encourage you and the audience tonight to do it. I wrote a letter to my 80-year-old self. And in writing that letter, I wanted that person to be proud of me. I wanted that person to be proud of the state that I left us in. And it's a great exercise sometimes I've heard exercises about writing your own eulogy. And that's something that's eye-opening as well, how you want to be remembered. But I wanted to know how I was going to survive at 80. And did I do the right things by me? And your book resonates with me because although the focus is on our sisters, it's still a familial focus for the community because we are all in this together. There is a cost at one section of our community not doing well. There's a cost to the rest of us. And, one of the things that Tamiko also asked about stepchildren, when you have blended families, which we are seeing more and more of, I know that from personal experience, you have a lot of not just personalities to deal with, but financial obligations. If you don't communicate and plan, you're going to run into marital or relationship problems. Once you think that your spouse is spending too much money on their 25-year-old and you think that person should be independent, but then they catch you sending your 24-year-old money for her car note, it's drama. So
Absolutely.
do you address that in the book? And if not, can you talk about it now? Like what's the right approach when dealing with stepchildren and finances?
Well, you said it early on, communication. You have to be on the same page, and you can't live by two different rule books.
Right.
You can't do that. It is important that you come to a decision together and that you both live by it, whatever that's going to be. If we're gonna treat them like adults and not keep taking care of them, then stay with that. Stick with it. It's okay. If we're gonna still respond to every need, then be okay with it together. Because it does take a long time for them to finally get out of your pocket.
Right.
I'm beginning to believe that they never do. I have like a 37-year-old and 32-year-old, and but then part of that is me, because I always want to be mommy who's
right.
I've learned to step back, and especially in this season, because I'm now the widow, and I don't want to outlive my money.
Yes. Yes.
The 80-year-old woman was stocking shelves.
Yes. There's a saying I heard where you say you try to have some money left at the end of the month, but most people have month left at the end of the money. And there's nothing worse than being on a broken income. And I use that term, tongue in cheek, because they say when we get older and we stop working, we're on a fixed income. There's nothing fixed about an income that's not making it happen. That's right. A broken income.
Right.
And I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we don't examine the contingencies, the worst case scenarios that can happen, because there's a reason Murphy has his law. There's a reason that whatever can happen will happen, and we need to get into those points. What I want to do right now is I want to go back to the book. I want to go back to your experience in late 2020. I want you, to the extent that you're willing to share and go through that time in your mind and your heart. What was the immediacy of your husband's passing? I know you and your husband had a great love for one another. I was looking at your Facebook page and I see
you've been doing your research.
Yeah, I see your tributes to him, and that moved me too. Like, to the way you love him now is moving. So I can't imagine the devastation that going into tomorrow without him felt for you. Right. And as a man, I cry thinking what he's in heaven looking like, oh, she has to do this without me. I was supposed to be there to take care of her. So walk us through what you feel has been the motivating factor to get up and do the next day.
Wow. I've said to a few people that I know that the relationship we had is what keeps me going, if that makes sense. I think because so many people recognize our relationship, and it's amazing the responses that I hear or I get on social media about how this was a love story lived before all of us. And I'm like, I didn't realize that many people were watching, but it makes me feel good to know that they saw that reality. So my husband traveled a lot, and he met a lot of people, a lot of places, and those people always come back and tell me he talked about you the entire time he was here. And so we had an awesome relationship. The void is unbelievable. My husband was sick for several years with cancer, but you wouldn't have known it to look at him.
Okay.
He never looked like, he never lost his hair. He never became really, these last days of his life, he had a stroke.
Mm.
And that's kind of what slowed him down. But even in his passing, it wasn't that. His heart just stopped beating.
Okay.
There's nothing else that's on the certificate that says cause of death, whatever. Heart just stopped beating. Unexpected. We all expected him to pull through the stroke and all. But I feel like personally, he got tired. He was tired and he felt like he wasn't going to recover. And if you knew my husband, he was, he was just the boss of everything and everybody. He was loud. He was hilarious. He was a comedian. He could walk in the room and suck the air out of it. Just his presence. He was bigger than life. And so that voice, that booming, raspy voice is not there. And so when the kids and I are together, we have a lot of things to remember that we laugh about, and what we're reminded of. But his absence is, but the fact that I had an insurance policy and that we had together started investing, not a whole lot. We're not wealthy, and that's it. When we talk to people about finances and preparing for their future, we're not suggesting that this is a get rich
plan. Right.
If you do, that's the plus.
Right. Most people aren't rich now, so we're not planning to be something we're not. We're planning to continue what we are.
Right. And I'm able to do that because we planned, because we did certain things. And so, and that's why it's just so ironic for me that in the same year of the book, he left us. It was devastating, and it still are devastating days. I mean, it will only be 2 years in September. And so we're still working through, I think we've covered most of the first holidays and whatnot, and we're still working through it. I mean, we have great days of laughter and fun and remember, and then out of nowhere, there'll be a certain memory that just triggers, all of that. But we're working through it, and for me, it's the smallest things. I was in Costco's with my daughter not too long ago. And prior to that visit to Costco's with her, the last time I was in Costco's, I was with my husband. And it had been since the stroke. So he wasn't as, able to do a lot of lifting, but we were together.
Right.
But what he did was, he passed by the area where they had flowers and grabbed a bouquet of flowers and handed them to me. Well, while I'm in Costco's with my daughter, we walked by the flowers and I had an instant flashback, and I just had to pull it together. I said, you cannot lose it in here. Don't do that. But little things like that. But I have to say that I am blessed because And in our case, I was the one that was responsible for the finances.
Yes. Okay.
That just basically meant paying the bills. It didn't mean knowing what the choices were for investments necessarily. We were just fortunate enough to have good people walk alongside of us.
Excellent.
But we made the right choices together. We must have insurance. We do need to start putting some money away. We do need a retirement fund. So we did those things together. And I very honestly, along with the good relationship, the fact that we did plan, and I was able to put him away nicely because that mattered.
Yes.
He was somebody.
Yes.
And I was able to put him away without pinching pennies and raising an offering and doing a GoFundMe.
Yes.
And, we shouldn't be doing things like that.
Agreed. That burns my very existence when I see us doing that. A couple of things I want to point out as we pivot to toward the turn toward the finish line here. A couple of the brothers in the audience have extended their condolences, as do I. I know I could see in your smile your love for your husband, and I'm glad that you have a chance to tell us all about him, and so his memory can live on. But I also know that there's some pain in telling the story, so I do appreciate you sharing that. Also, I want to deal with Carol's question. A little bit about your husband's passing has answered this question, but I think if we just deal with it directly as to how do women start over? So whether it's divorce or whether it's, through bereavement, what do we do if we are trying to tell our mom, our aunt, our sister, or your friend, hey, here's where you pull yourself up and you move forward?
Well, I'm not sure I have the whole answer to that yet, but what I do know is you have to do you. A lot of people will have a lot of opinions about what they think you should do based on what they think they know about you and your spouse's life or whatever, or what they just know about you. I am literally in the process of figuring all of that out. But I feel like I have options.
Yes.
And that's what's key. And so for that younger woman, especially, and I guess I would say for any woman, do whatever is necessary to ensure that you have options.
Yes.
And finances is a large part of that, but also knowing who you are, being okay with who you are, and not allowing others to create you to be who they want you to be.
This is the first time. Yeah, I say that for everybody, tomorrow is the first time that you have had that opportunity to live that day. And no one can actually tell you how to do it. You have a hard enough time figuring out how to do it, and it's your day.
Absolutely. So, and I had to get an attitude. I constantly say to myself, don't become bitter. Don't become bitter. But my attitude had to become, I don't care what anybody says. Everybody just leave me alone and let me figure this out.
Yes.
Because I've lost my best friend and I've lost my greatest supporter, my number one fan. So I can't hear all of these voices telling me what I should do next.
Yes.
So I appreciate the love and the concern. And I've had a lot of support. I don't want to, act like I haven't, but my advice would be to any other woman who ends up in a situation, take time to breathe. Don't rush into anything else. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. And if it's a divorce situation, you certainly don't need to be trying to prove something to your ex. Just breathe.
Just breathe. It's funny. I'll go back to Will Smith's book as we wrap up for a hot second. He called Quincy Jones when him and his first wife was getting a divorce, and he said, "Quincy, what do I do?" He said, "Give her half your stuff and be prepared to see her at Christmas." And Will Smith didn't want to do it, didn't follow that advice. But he said, in the end of his book, he said, Quincy was right. I don't think there's been a Christmas since we got divorced where we haven't been together with the kids or had to deal with each other.
Right.
I think, and I haven't experienced the death of a very close loved one, so I don't want to in any way, shape, or form minimize that experience. But I will say one thing about divorce, it's the recurring pain. It's, when someone has passed and you've said your final goodbye, no matter how painful it is, that you're not going to see them again in this life.
Right.
When you have and I've said this on the program before, when you have this love for someone and it turns sour, and now you're going to see that person 15, 6, 4, 97 times a year, you got to keep reliving that. And it's a different planning in that, so they're both horrible. When something dies, a feeling, a time, a season, it's time to mourn that. We have to mourn that. And I love your advice of just giving yourself time to breathe, because as you said, and probably couldn't have captured it any better if anyone else said it, who's your number one fan and your biggest supporter? It's so much more than who's just my spouse. Like, we were a team. The fact that you have so much in place, you planned with your partner. And I think that's the message I want our audience to go away with tonight is planning with your partner, because that in and of itself, that exercise is something that'll bring a marriage or a relationship closer together.
Yes.
So with our final few minutes, please, please, please tell everybody where they can find you. Your website is beautiful, by the way. I love the colors and everything, where they can find you. You have another product on your website. I think it's a skincare product or something.
No, it's actually a scent. Candles, yes, scents. The website is sabrinajellis.com, and the publisher is for the book is Zulon Press, XULON Press.com. Also, the book is sold on Amazon. That's always the quick and easy way to get it, but it is on Amazon.com. And those are the three ways: the website, Amazon, and the publisher. You can get the book on either of those three platforms.
I appreciate that. And Tasha Wana, who's one of our, she's my sister, went to Temple together. She put the book information in the chat earlier. And Tasha Wana, if you could put it back in now, I'd appreciate it. What I want to do is invite you to come back. We're going to do at some point in March, I think we're going to do this with the fellas. And then I'd like to maybe come back the next month or a month after that and have us all together, men and women talking about this topic so we can strengthen our community.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
That's all. That's what it's always about. So I thank you very much. I thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I thank Dr. Sabrina Ellis for being with us and sharing her story, sharing her passion for helping people, sharing the book, Wife Life. You have to get it. You have to understand that planning is paramount to a happy and successful life. And anyone who loves you and who you love, you would want that planning to take place for a happy existence now and in the future. And with that being said, I want you guys to all remember our motto here at Wealth Our Way. Wealth is not only for the wealthy. I will see you all. Thank you so very much. Take care and good night.